Hello and welcome to a Cinematic Universe live minisode. We are once again live on YouTube. We have hopefully got at least some people watching along live. Otherwise, this might be a really short episode. If it is a really short episode, that will be a good thing because we are recording this on the hottest day of the year. And when you're doing a podcast, you can't have a fan on. So
I've got a fan on.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
I try not to have a fan on for the noise because otherwise it'll be really noisy in the background. So maybe if you're listening to the podcast version and there's an incredibly annoying fan sound in the background, then blame James because I haven't got my fan on.
I'll turn my fan off.
I'd also be fine with keeping this short because I'd like to finish before the end of the Chelsea-Man City game so that I can see whether Liverpool... Oh, I've just pointed at the wrong bit of my shirt because my camera's mirrored. To see if Liverpool become champions. Liverpool could be champions in the next hour and a half, but depending on the results of Chelsea and Man City. I can see that there are a few people watching, according to the little number that pops up on my screen. So if you want to say hello in the comments. We don't have a load of pre-prepared stuff to talk about. I think there's one bit of news that or news/rumour that we'll try and talk a little bit about. But then that will hopefully lead into you all asking us questions. So we've got a couple of questions from Twitter. But if you're there in the comments, say hello and feel free to chat with us and ask us anything you want because we just thought we'd have a bit of a catch-up chat, really.
Because there's not much news happening.
Well, yeah. And we are a bit behind on our next main episode. Oh, apparently I'm very quiet on YouTube. Am I very quiet to you, James?
No, you are fine to me.
Okay. Let me know in the comments if I sound quiet to anybody else. Again, I'm gonna have to try and edit this somehow on the podcast version. I'll just move the microphone a little closer. I do sometimes have problems with this USB mic. Hey ho. I will have to edit that now. Anyway, what I was going to say was we are a bit behind on main episodes. There's been a bit of a gap since our Batman and Robin episode, but we have got our next episode lined up with Caroline and with Joe coming back for a bit. Yes, you can look forward to that in the coming however long. Hopefully we'll get it recorded and released in the next couple of weeks. I'm still getting people saying that I'm quiet, so this one's going really well. This is what happens when you don't have a chance to get on and test before before going live. I tell you what, I'm just gonna dither for a minute and I'll edit this out of the audio version and I'll just see if I can improve my audio.
Should I do like a song and dance?
James, vamp for a bit.
Oh God, vamp. What have I been up to? I mean, I've been reading The Immortal Hulk, which I really enjoyed. Took me a while to get into it, but I read the first 12 issues about 2 weeks ago, and then it went on sale this weekend. So I read the remaining sort of 20 issues or something. It is extremely good. It's the first Al Ewing comic that's really clicked with me, and I'm glad that it finally has, because everyone's been raving about Al Ewing for years, and I've just never really got him. But Immortal Hulk is a really interesting take on the Hulk as a character. It's not one that I would say I was expecting to enjoy, because it's kind of supernaturally tinged. It's based around horror, which, again, not something I really closely associate with the Hulk, but Al Ewing has got a take on the Hulk, and he's really gone for it in a way that I think is creating one of the all-time great runs. And the thing I like about it, whatever that was loud.
That was
Jesus. Sweet Jesus. Oh. That's very loud.
Okay. Bear with me a second. Is there a loud kind of computer fan noise as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm probably better off not using that, aren't I?
You might
just. This is going really well.
Just turn the internal mic down a little bit.
I've no idea how to do that. There's no option.
Should I do some live tech support with you?
So basically, I could be really quiet or really loud. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to restart the recording of this for its pod version in a minute when I've sorted out what audio. I've got another microphone here somewhere, and I'm not sure where it is. So I'm just going to keep looking for it. James, carry on talking about Immortal Hulk.
Carry on talking about Immortal Hulk. You know you can look at the volume mixer in Windows, right?
Yeah, but it's not going to look. It's full on my headset mic. So apparently we're both about the same level now, according to
okay.
So maybe whatever I did is just kick that into life. If I sound okay, then we'll carry on. The problem
well,
is
let me
about 2 minutes behind. Carry on what you were saying, James.
I will quickly finish off my Immortal Hulk thing, which is that one of the things I really appreciated about it is that it sort of references the entire history of Incredible Hulk, like all the stuff I read, all the stuff that came before, all the stuff that came after. It's a really respectful and yet completely new take on the character. It's great. I would hugely recommend reading it. Oh, you've disappeared out of shot. I'm just looking at Seb's comic boxes now. You've got actual labels on yours. This is very professional.
Actual labels on my comic boxes. This is shambolic.
I mean, it's been a while.
So
we've never had one this shambolic before.
So the loudness comment was in relation to when I switched to my computer. Right, I've got one other microphone, which is the microphone on my webcam, but it's very bad quality. I don't know where my other. I've got a decent USB microphone, and I don't know where it's gone. So I'm going to try switching, and yeah, I have a feeling this one's not going to be releasable on the podcast feed. So let's just like have it as a fun YouTube chat. But I am just going to switch.
Okay, I'm going to take my headphones out while you do that.
Right, so it's the HD.
So it's that one. So it's the microphone on my webcam. How's that?
Yeah. Are you on Windows?
Yeah.
Right. So right-click on the speaker icon in the system tray.
It's on 100% on my USB one. My USB one, for some reason, probably because it's going through a hub, is yeah.
Yeah, but do that and do open sound settings.
Yes, I know how to get to the sound settings.
Yeah. So do that.
Yeah, but so it's on 100 now, but I don't know if that's too loud. So yeah, what I might have to do is just wait for a YouTube comment to come in. Meantime, people are just going to be leaving this stream, like unless they're just enjoying the ridiculously. Right, okay, am I too loud? Okay, how about there? I've put it down to like 73. How's that? You could turn your right. You need to turn your audio down because I'm getting comments on YouTube saying that we were at similar volume when I switched to that microphone. So you actually need to turn your audio down.
Okay, I have turned my iPad down to 30%.
There you go. Okay, right. Are we good? should we do a podcast before everybody leaves?
We can do a podcast now, yeah.
Right. Okay. So hello. We're finally going to talk about some stuff that isn't technical issues or Al Ewing Hulk comics that James is finally enjoying about 3 years after everyone told him that it was any good. So. Let's start off because there is one bit of so there was one bit of actual news, which was the sad passing away of Joel Schumacher, and which I think felt slightly unfortunately timed for us because our most recent episode was us laying into Batman and Robin.
In fairness, it would have been a lot more unfortunately timed if it died about 2 weeks earlier.
Well, I was going to say it would be a lot more unfortunately timed if it had been Akiva Goldsman who died, because I think he's the one who we really laid into more than Joel Schumacher. But what was quite surprising / weird around about the same time as that news coming out was this story breaking about Michael Keaton and the fact that Michael Keaton might be playing Bruce Wayne in the DCEU in The Flash. Which is just a little bit mind-boggling, really. What was your reaction to that, James?
What was my reaction to it? It's a fun idea. I mean, it seems a bit sort of stunt casting, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess it depends. Is it sort of, are they doing some kind of alternate universe thing, and is he actually like Bruce Wayne from those films? I would kind of imagine not, and it's just more he is going to be a Bruce Wayne and potentially an alternate Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, my sort of feeling is those Burton movies aren't really compatible with the DC extended universe as it stands. No. So
not even really as an alternate universe of it. You can do what they did in Crisis and kind of have a nod to it. I don't know if you've seen there was a scene in Crisis where one of the Earths had Alexander Knox on it, and that was the Burton verse Earth.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really kind of shoehorn that version of Batman into that universe in a way that really works or makes sense.
No, although it would be fun to see Keaton's take on the Affleck Batman.
Yeah, it's like, is he actually going to be supposed to be playing the Affleck? Is it like he's lost a load of weight and some hair and like?
I don't know. I mean, the thing about the DC movies is that they don't seem too worried about having inter-movie continuity, and they're doing what they seem to be doing is a bit more like, does it work for this movie? Like, here are those characters. Don't worry too much about where they've come from and where they're going, which is totally opposite to Marvel, but also a totally valid way of approaching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I think I would like about Keaton's version is that, like, the Affleck Bruce Wayne reminded me more of Keaton's version than anyone else's. Like, it had that kind of dry humor that...
The dry humor, the kind of the weird loner, but with a bit of a... bit of kind of weird. I mean, yeah, I think probably in Justice League, probably some of the better stuff was Affleck as Bruce Wayne rather than Affleck as Batman, and you know, that interaction with the Flash, you can see why they'd be putting Bruce Wayne in a Flash movie. I mean, it's completely ripped from. I mean, let's look. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like DC and nicking all their good ideas from the MCU, but it is looking at the Tony Stark, Peter Parker dynamic and doing something similar. I mean, a comment here saying, the speculation I've seen suggests he'll be playing a mentor training a younger hero like Batman Beyond. So it's not like
like Spider-Man Homecoming.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not like the MCU was the first to do it, but but it's whether playing a mentor training a younger hero, does that mean that the Flash is who he's a mentor to, or that he happens to be training a younger Batman and also just happens to be involved in the Flash's story somehow? But
I mean, the Flash was set up in Justice League as being basically a neophyte who had never done superheroing, so it's not that much of a stretch to imagine that it's him, right? And I would like that, I think, because like that version of the Flash was really good fun and one of the better things about Justice League. So
yeah, there's a comment here from John saying Keaton would make a good Thomas Wayne, which there have been rumored, because obviously the Flash movie was originally supposed to be Flashpoint, although I gather it's now not. Although there clearly is going to be something going on with timelines and alternate versions. Yeah, I would kind of agree. Michael Keaton could make a good Thomas Wayne. I really don't like Flashpoint Batman Thomas Wayne. I don't like the story beat of let's have a version of Thomas Wayne who's a baddie. Like, I don't really like it. I think it's unimaginative. And also, I'd more just want to see Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, because Michael Keaton was a great Bruce Wayne and one who I think we appreciate more and more as time goes on. And then you appreciate things like, just how good he was in Spider-Man Homecoming. And, I just want to see Michael Keaton is someone I'd be very happy to see turn up doing whatever in the DCEU. But as a version of Batman, there is a bit of a kind of fanboy thrill about that. Definitely.
I was going to say, I think it would be a mistake to have him in a DC movie playing a version of Batman and not have him be Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think they would sail that close to it and then not do it.
I mean, I was going to say, I guess, could that be confusing to your casual audience? But then it could be a nice bait and switch for your casual audience, because you see Michael Keaton, you go, oh, that's Bruce Wayne. And then the twist is, no, my name's Thomas Wayne. Again, not entirely dissimilar to a bait and switch that we had with Michael Keaton in another superhero
I think
film,
the problem with doing it that way is you would have to set up very early on that Thomas Wayne was Batman's father, because it's not common enough knowledge. And as soon as they start going like, hey, let me tell you about your father, Thomas Wayne, you'll be like, okay, I get it.
All you've got to do, James, there's this moment in comics, and it hasn't been seen very often, and it hasn't been done on screen very often. But all you've got to do is just show this guy Thomas Wayne going down an alley, and a mugger and some pearls crash into the ground. That's all you've got to do, and it's never been done before. So I think they could get away with doing it again.
Sure.
Michael Keaton. I forget Michael Keaton's going to be in Morbius.
Is it Morbius?
I forget Morbius exists.
I was going to say. I think we can safely ignore that one, right?
We've had a comment from an anonymous commenter saying, why do you not agree with the amazing and extremely handsome Amon Warman, who's obviously right when he says Kevin Conroy is the best Batman?
Kevin Conroy has not yet played Batman on screen.
He has played Bruce Wayne in the Arrowverse Crisis, though. Which Jack pointed out. I think there is definitely solid grounds to call Kevin Conroy the best performance of Batman that's been on screen. But then I'm someone who doesn't think that there's really been a definitive screen Batman, probably aside from Kevin Conroy's voice. So I think he probably is the best screen Batman, but I don't think he's the best screen Bruce Wayne. I think Michael Keaton is the best screen Bruce Wayne.
I am tempted to say that Adam West is the definitive Batman.
Pure West.
Right.
I think he is definitive of a particular type, and I think
he's definitely my favourite. We should do that movie. Why haven't we done it yet? We haven't done it for ages because Joe was so.
I was going to say I can tell you why we didn't do it, and it is because Joe didn't want to do it because it was my suggestion for the 100th episode. I thought that'd be a really good fun one.
Yeah,
to do.
I supported you in that.
Yeah, and Joe was. This is a peek behind the curtain. Joe was really resistant to the idea of doing it as the 100th one, and we were like, yeah, because he was like he didn't think he'd really enjoy it, and we were like, yeah, but it'd still be a lot of fun. And it wasn't until we actually did the episode and like literally just before it that he told us that he was leaving the podcast full time. And so then it made sense. It was like, okay, that's why you don't want a film that you think you're not going to like to be your last one. But if it was just the 100th and Joe wasn't leaving, I think we could have won that fight. Yes, we'll look to do Batman 66 this year. I think we'll need it. So we will definitely look at doing that.
In these strange and uncertain times, Seb.
The Keaton news does actually bring us on to, and that discussion of the podcast brings us on to a couple of questions that we've had that both kind of relate to this news. So I'll do the first one, which is about the podcast first, which is from Stephen, who says, with the Keaton news to discuss, do you ever consider recovering Batman 89 or any of the other under an hour episodes from the early days?
No.
I find myself at times, there are some films like that, definitely Batman 89, definitely Raimi Spider-Man, where I feel like I want to rewatch them and talk about them again. I think that's partly why we did the commentary things. There's a part of me that's thinking, if I can persuade you back on for another live commentary, James, let's do Raimi Spider-Man. Because I just found myself really wanting to rewatch that and talk about it. Because, yeah, in those early days, we weren't as self-indulgent as we are now. And we, our Daredevil episode is like 56 minutes long with a news section. It's ridiculously short. And I think there's possibly justification for going back and doing some revisiting in ways. I don't think we'd ever just go back and do a full episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we could do that. I think you're right. A live commentary, live viewing, might be
a live
way
commentary, or
that,
like a Patreon bonus episode where we went back and if we said, oh, let's this week or this month for Patreon, we're going to rewatch this and we're going to sort of talk for about 20 minutes on an episode about stuff that we didn't talk about at the time or stuff that's occurred to us since. That might, if people want to hear that, and hey, if you want to hear it, let us know. That might be something that we could do. But yeah, I don't think we'd ever think, oh, this is our do-over for one of those. There are episodes where I look back and I'm like, I wish we were doing those now in kind of the format that we do now, going into a bit more depth. I think, we're used to talking about these films more. Some of them would be interesting to do with Joe from a perspective of Joe knowing more about the comics than he used to. But because of the way we did the chronological sequence thing, we did some of the really major important films early on. We did Batman 89, we did Superman 78, we did Spider-Man 2002 really early in the run. We also got things like X-Men Origins Wolverine out of the way without having to devote too much time and brain space to them. So, swings and roundabouts. But so I think, we might do a bit of reappraisal, but yeah, and a good suggestion from Neil, actually, like doing like a bonus episode looking at a set of films. So, for example, talking about all three Raimi films in one mini episode would be interesting because by nature we would have tended to talk about those films individually rather than as part of the series. So we could do one on the whole X-Men series. We have finished the X-Men series now, haven't we?
I mean, New Mutants is coming out.
That doesn't count. It's not. I still refuse to believe that film is ever going to be released. Yeah. It's not coming out, James.
I don't think it's coming out either, but technically we're waiting for that, and then we've done everything.
I have another question to read from Twitter, and then when we finished answering that, we've had some comments from YouTube that are comments on what we've been talking about and on my technical issues. But if you have any other stuff you want to ask us about, get it in the queue now, because hopefully it'll be there for when we finish talking about some of the other questions that we've had. Actually, no, sorry, I've got two more, not one more. But Jason asks, with the DCEU becoming ever more complicated as to what is or isn't canon, is it now more like comics than the MCU is? I mean, I suppose in a way, but I think DC are, and it's something you said before, James, about, I think DC are shifting towards this idea of there are these multiple different versions, and we've seen it with the TV stuff as well. And it doesn't really necessarily matter how they fit in relation to one another, because you can kind of pick and choose the bits and the versions that you want. And that to me feels like inherently more a DC thing than a Marvel thing anyway.
It's a bit like the X-Men movies, right? In that the problem with the X-Men movies is that they want to have their cake and eat it, in that they try and set them up like a series, but also they don't logically follow one from one another. Whereas in the DC ones, like, they briefly reference Justice League in Aquaman, but it's not like the events of Aquaman are predicated on what happens in Justice League.
Yeah.
They just say, like, hey, here's Aquaman, off you go, have an adventure. I think that's a bit more likely what we're going to find. Whether that makes it as complicated as comics, I don't know. Like, I think the complexity of comics continuity is perhaps overstated a bit.
Well, I'd say, I think that comics are moving more towards a model where, it's literal in the case of DC, where the reboots are happening so frequently that it's like continuity now takes place in pockets, and each pocket picks and chooses which bits. And that to me has felt like, we have to bear in mind that like, we treat the concept of continuity in comics as something that can be applied consistently over what is now becoming a very long period of time. And the concept of continuity in comics, when people our age and slightly older were getting into comics, you're talking about the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. That is 20, 30, 40 years ago. That is like the same amount of time again. So I do think that we are having to kind of reappraise what continuity is, in the sense of, it is completely unsustainable to have these comics universes that are supposed to have gone on for the time that they were supposed to have gone on for. And so I think treating things in chunks and I think runs on comics or runs of series or films or whatever that that basically use previous stuff as background if they want to, but if they also want to do something that contradicts something that might have happened 20 years ago, do it. What's to stop you?
The thing that people get sort of worked up about is this idea that, like, every comic should be in line with every other comic, and that's not how DC were doing it for years, right? It wasn't until when Stan Lee was basically writing and editing every Marvel book that they had this really tight continuity. And then after that, like, things loosened up, and you had some editors, like Mark Grenwald was really into keeping things consistent. But the more the comics lines expanded, the less tenable that idea became. And these days, they basically, the only nod they do to that is like, let's not have the same characters appearing in the same books at the same time. Just so that people aren't like, hey, why did I read 3 Juggernaut stories this month? Yeah.
That's the kind of thing where continuity makes sense. Or like, if in a current story you've just killed off Professor X, don't have Professor X turn up somewhere 2 months later. That's where continuity makes sense. It's about your current framework. But comics have to have passed a point now, because they don't change the characters with regularity. Comics can't be treated like a soap opera. They can't be something where this character has been around for 30 years, unless you do what they probably should have started doing and have tried to do, which is to bring in legacy characters and have the characters actually age and retire and die. Like, comics have resisted that for too long. And so unless you get, for example, DC were reportedly looking at doing this 5G thing, which was going to be, they were going to draw a line and they were going to date the characters and put them in timeframes throughout the 20th and early 21st century, and then start with, from the sound of it, a bunch of new younger characters. I mean, it probably would have been commercial suicide, but that would be the only way to keep continuity going. And you look at Marvel, you look at the Ultimate Universe. The Ultimate Universe gets set up in the year 2000 as, here is our universe that is completely unencumbered by continuity. You don't have to have followed the stories. We don't have to worry about sliding timelines because we've made everything line up with the year 2000. And then what happens? That universe runs for 10, 15 years, and then it's, yeah, but Peter Parker has only aged 3 years in that time. He was supposed to be like 15 in the year 2000, and now he's still only like 17. And you've got all the same long continuity problems, and you've let Jonathan Hickman destroy half of Europe, and that has to have an effect on the rest of the stories that you're telling. So where do you go from here? And so that, you know, it is. I speak as someone who does have a lot of affection for certain areas of the Ultimate Universe and was quite invested in it as a big picture for quite a long time. You know, I still wouldn't say really that I was too annoyed to see it disappear, because it had served its purpose and it had gone. Louis says as well, you know, it's a bit like continuity in The Simpsons.
I was thinking of The Simpsons.
Yeah, you know, The Simpsons has had this problem of, you know, in those early days, it was so firmly dated because they did the flashback stuff and they made it so of a time. You know, Marge and Homer have to have been young in the 70s, and then you get what I presume you're about to.
Yeah, that really horrendous episode where they do a flashback to Homer and Marge being young in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah. But the thing is, we're almost past a point where you'd have to move on from that now, because I think that episode was about 10 years or so.
We're going to get young Homer and Marge watching 9/11.
Yeah, you know, this is like, I was a small child when The Simpsons started, and now I am the same age that Homer is supposed to be in about the first. I think they've upped his age by a couple of years now, but in peak era Simpsons, Homer's 37 and I'm 37.
I was the same age as Bart, and now I look like The Simpsons.
But you know, I think at least with The Simpsons, I think what The Simpsons doesn't try to do is to say every single Simpsons episode that you've watched before happened. If they want to make reference to something, they can pull a bit of something from the past, but they can also contradict it if they want to. But you know, that is the sort of the perennial thing of, you know, it's a cartoon and it's been running for 30 years. So but you know, Marvel and DC Comics are cartoons that have been running for 30 years. How much does it wind you up if you're talking about the idea of comics and being into comics with somebody who's not comicsy and they call them cartoons? Does that annoy you, or are you not sort of?
I can't say it's ever happened, but I would not at all be wound up by it. Because they are cartoons, right?
I guess they are, but people do just conflate comic and cartoon quite easily. And
cartooning is a form, right? And comics employ cartoons.
Comics are a form of cartoon, but
yeah.
I don't know. I suppose this is a bit like, you know, being the kind of person who would say graphic novel instead of comics, and it's like, no, all graphic novels are comics, and a lot of things that get called graphic novels are not graphic novels. So is the DCEU now more like comics than the MCU? No, I think it's like comics, but in different ways.
Yeah, they're both like comics, but in slightly different ways.
Yeah. One more of our Twitter questions, and then we've got a couple of questions have come in via YouTube as well. Nick asks, I know you don't often talk about superhero games on the podcast. It's because we don't get a chance to play them usually. I don't have a current console. I do have a PC that can now play decent games, but I don't use it to play Well, actually, no, most of the superhero games don't get released on it. I can't play Spider-Man. Anyway, and I wasn't that keen on the Batman Arkham games. I've got 2 or 3 of them on the PC, but I've only played one of them. So
there's only like 4.
I think I've got Asylum and City, and I've played Asylum, and I played a bit of City possibly at your house. I think I played City for like about an hour or so with you. I think.
Oh wait, hang on.
This was years ago. This was years and years ago.
I'm trying to remember what the 3rd and 4th ones were. I only bought the first 2. I played the first one and then bought the second one.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe
no,
it was City,
I did.
yeah.
I think I played about an hour of City at your house. It was
Yeah.
fine, but it didn't really massively scratch a Batman itch for
Yeah,
me.
well, I didn't play
Anyway,
anymore after that. So.
well, this question is partly relevant to that because we've been asked to comment on these recent bits of games-related news. So there is the PS5 Spider-Man Miles Morales teaser, the new trailers for Avengers, and the rumor that Rocksteady's next DC game is going to be Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League.
Right.
So, well, Spider-Man first. I mean, it was quite nice and exciting seeing the idea that they were doing a game around Miles until it turned out that they're not doing a game around Miles.
No, well, they are sort of.
It's an
They're not-
expansion, though, isn't it? It's not a
It's
new game. It's not the next Spider-Man game,
No,
and Miles
well,
is the
that's the
start
thing.
for an entire sequel.
It's more like Spider-Man 1.5. So it builds on the story of Spider-Man 1, but it's going to be a shorter, smaller game starring Miles.
So it's Half-Life
Which is
2,
not-
Episode 1.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad idea because that first Spider-Man game is massive, like absolutely fucking huge. And, you know, if this is a 10-hour game instead of a 70, 80-hour game, I'm down with that. Like,
It's still a game.
I like short games, yeah.
Yeah. Neil says they are. It's just half the length. They're probably just reusing the assets from the first one. So as you said,
exactly,
1.5 is a way of putting it. My biggest thing from it when I watched the trailer was I don't like the Miles character design when it doesn't look like in Spider-Verse. I think Spider-Verse has ruined the comicsy version of Miles's outfit. I liked it when it first came along. But as soon as Spider-Verse just made it look so much cooler, changed the silhouette a bit, changed the logo to that like graffiti logo, I've found ever since then, looking at Miles in the comics, I think Miles's costume looks really old-fashioned.
So
and in the game trailer, I thought it looked like that as well.
There is a 100% chance that the Spider-Verse outfit is going to be an alternate one because the number of alternate outfits in the first Spider-Man game was so high. It was something like 50, 60 alternate outfits. And most of the reason I played that game was because I just loved unlocking all the outfits.
Well, I may finally get to, because I'm always, basically with consoles, I'm usually a good generation behind in that I pick up a console when it's gone cheap because the next one's come along. It's this console generation has been going on for like a lifetime. So I haven't picked up an Xbox. Also, you know, I've had a child, and that's, you know, your TV becomes more off limits for gaming. This is why I do all my gaming on my PC. But also now that I have a second screen in my office, I could feasibly get a PS4 when they go cheap and play Spider-Man on it finally, or just, you know, go the whole hog and get a PS5. But that's never going to happen. So it'll be a Switch first because, as I mentioned, have a child. But yeah, so you know, that's good that they're doing that. That's the direction. I mean, my other reaction when the kind of news first came out was I am kind of at a point now where I don't see an urgent need for like new Peter Parker stories in any media. And I say that as someone who likes the MCU version and will keep watching those MCU films. But I do feel a little bit like, have we said all we can say or need to say with Peter Parker? And would those energies be better spent on Spider-Man stories that are about Miles Morales instead?
I'm just very happy to play a new Spider-Man game because that was absolutely brilliant. Like, I had such a good time with it. I 100%ed it, which I don't do with many games.
Was it better than Spider-Man 2, the movie game?
Yes.
Because it did seem to be based on the same principles of it's a GTA Spider-Man game.
Previously, my favourite version of Spider-Man in a game was the Ultimate Spider-Man game, which was a lot like the Spider-Man 2 game. It just set in the Ultimate universe.
It just they did like a flat cell shaded look for it, but it was basically the same style of gameplay. Yeah.
I really like that game. That was my favourite, and this feels like an amped up version of those two games. Yeah.
Jack also says the Lego superhero games are pretty fun and they're on PC. Yes, I've got a couple of them in my Steam library that I've picked up. So I've played a bit of Lego Batman. It's good fun. Again, I think that's going to be that'll come out with Lois, I think, quite soon. I think she'll enjoy a bit of Lego Batman. In fact, I think they've got it on the Wii, so that might come out at some point because she likes Lego, she likes Batman.
Have you seen the Avengers game trailers?
No, so that was So we're going to move on to that. The next one, the trailers for the Avengers game. Yes, I watched the trailer for that.
The more I see of that game, the less I want to spend money on it.
I dislike almost every aesthetic decision they've made with that game. It already looks dated, and it looks like they've kind of tried to do in some cases what the Injustice games have done in terms of, like, you look at some of the footage of like a version of Black Widow where she's got like all of this kind of tech all over it. It's like basically souping up the costumes and kind of. But I think Injustice gets away with it, and I actually kind of, I mean, I'm not super keen on them as games because they're beat 'em ups, and I like to beat 'em up, but then I get bored of it after about 10 minutes. But I kind of, I've got this kind of grudging admiration for what the
comic,
what those games have done in terms of they've created their own universe that's become like really popular, and like, you know, it's got its own comics, it's got its own kind of timeline and fan base and everything, and it's done
it's
that
really popular with people who think Zack Snyder is too light.
Yeah, true. It is very much a yes, what if everyone was bad? But I think how they've worked is that they've just gone like, to hell with it, let's just go as crazy as possible, and let's like introduce as many different characters from across the continuity as possible, and different versions of characters, and gone over the top with the costumes and stuff. And Avengers looks like they've kind of taken a bit of, oh, we're a video game so we can make them a bit different, but also we're trying to look a bit like the movies, but we don't have the movies voice actors, and we don't have the movies license rights, and so it's really awkward. Jason says he thinks it looks great. So Jason, tell us in the comments, like, what specifically do you think looks great about this? I like the idea that they've based it around Ms. Marvel, and this idea of Ms. Marvel as a fan kind of Ms. Marvel as a point of view character is a really good idea. And if you're going to do a game where I would imagine you're going to encounter and unlock characters as you go on, that's quite a good way in. But otherwise,
what I see when I look at it is just, here is a game that doesn't have very expansive gameplay, because what the impression I get is that you're just going to go through various levels, and you are going to like have a section where you play as the Hulk, and so you run along smashing stuff up, and then you play as Captain America, so you run around beating people up, and then you play as Black Widow, so you have to sneak around. It's just like it seems to me like it's going to be heavily like prescriptive in how you can play. It's basically going to be a little story on rails, and compared to something like Spider-Man, where you get so much agency in what you do, it doesn't look exciting to me.
What about, as Stephen raises this valid point, MODOK is the villain?
Do we really care?
I mean, if they don't do anything fun or interesting with him, then
I'm a little bit past like lol MODOK.
I did like the "My name is D Blake" name tag, but I don't think that joke originates there. So it's there was as well, there just something felt really clunky. Like there was sort of the in the trailer there was sort of, you know, sequences of bits of dialogue and audio from the game, and there was a voiceover saying something like Jarvis has unencrypted the schematics, and we now have access to this technology. And it was like, unencrypted? Like, there's a perfectly good word called decrypted. There's just little things like that. I know it's a little thing to focus on, but it just seemed a bit, clunky.
My friend Josh said that this trailer makes the Avengers look square as fuck, and I think it really does. It makes them look so uncool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of that's the thing again. It's sort of I feel like it should have gone kind of more over the top. And yeah, you know, Jason remarks like the costumes don't bother him because they'll be customizable like in Spider-Man. And that's true, but I'm not even
convinced they will be.
Well, but I do think that they say something about an aesthetic and a feel that the game will have, and it's just it's like if that's your base look, if that's your Captain America, you know, Iron Man looks fine, but
Captain America dressed like a riot cop.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing. So I mean, it was like, did you see that thing on social media where they'd had something about they'd done an in-universe tweet about a memorial to the Avengers like being vandalized, and it was like, guys, like read the room seriously. Yeah. So okay, what then about Rocksteady doing a Suicide Squad game?
Like I say, I disengaged with Rocksteady's Batman after the second one because it was fine. It was fun. I really loved Arkham Asylum. I thought that was great. The follow-up, I can't remember. I'm gonna Google what they were, or maybe someone can tell us.
Yeah, but the comments take about 3 minutes to come through. So
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna Google it, and by the time they're giving me the answers, right?
I mean, sorry, go on. I'll let you do your googling.
Arkham Asylum was really good. I thought it was very tightly contained story. It gave you a lot of the detective stuff. Had lots of characters in. It was really good fun. Arkham City was a longer and sort of bigger game. Had some things that I wasn't as keen on. It had a really embarrassing portrayal of Catwoman in it that was not so great. Have you ever seen actually the videos where they swap around the character models for Batman and Catwoman?
No.
So you get Batman acting like Catwoman does, and it just
walking like Catwoman and stuff.
It just shows you how ridiculously over the top and sexualized they made Catwoman, and you're kind of yeah, okay, it does look ridiculous. But it was more. There were lots of sections in the game where the thing you had to do was fly from one end of the map to the other, and it took ages. And then Arkham Knight had a similar thing, but there were driving sections where you're in the Batmobile, and everyone hated those so much. I was like, I'm just not going to get this game because I can't imagine enjoying that. So yeah.
But notwithstanding having disengaged from Rocksteady, the idea of a Suicide Squad game, and I mean notwithstanding the Suicide Squad's general sort of overuse of this, because there's one immediate thought that strikes me that probably isn't what they'll do with this game, but that I think would be brilliant, which is you do a Suicide Squad game where that has loads and loads of characters to choose from, and you can put together a Suicide Squad of a bunch of characters chosen from a wider selection, and your characters have permadeath. And if your character gets killed on a mission, your character is dead, and you cannot reuse them for the rest of that save, and you have to bring in another member of the team, and you have to get through the team, because it's the Suicide Squad. It is part of the premise of Suicide Squad is characters should die in it. And I think a Suicide Squad game with character permadeath, almost like basically XCOM. That's what I'm talking about. XCOM, aren't I? Really? I mean, XCOM, you can, if you don't Iron Man it, you can cheat and you can bring back a squad member. But yeah, that would be, I think, what I'd want to see. Otherwise, I mean, fine. I don't see any harm in leveraging the popularity of Suicide Squad because they are probably the most popular. Yeah, so I mean, come on, Suicide Squad is one of DC's biggest properties at the moment. James, the film was a hit. The film was bad, but it was a hit. People love Harley Quinn. The comics sell, and James Gunn is doing a Suicide Squad movie. So
okay,
yeah,
yeah. I in all honesty, unless it gets amazing reviews, I probably won't play it. But I hope if Harley Quinn's in it, I will be interested because I'm that basic.
Yeah. But hopefully not Rocksteady's version of Harley Quinn, because Rocksteady have contributed to the bad aesthetic of Harley Quinn that I think they're finally gradually getting away from. But
yeah, that's true. The murderness Harley Quinn. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our view on games news and on superhero games in general. If anyone wants to comment and let us know what your favourite. What is Spider-Man your favourite ever superhero game then, James?
Yeah, it's close. I think my favourite would be Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Okay.
I had a very good time with that. Although I did buy maybe X-Men Legends too. Because those type of games I really enjoyed, like the breadth of fun you could have in it. Like the number of characters, the number of costumes, the way you could design your team. I really loved it. That said, I bought Ultimate Alliance 3, played about 3 hours of it, and went, yeah, I'm just going to sell this because I don't enjoy it. So, maybe it was all about that time and that place.
Yeah.
Rather than the game itself, because Ultimate Alliance 3, I was not at all interested in.
Yeah, I think it was partly, it's sort of that early 2000s games, which is why Spider-Man 2 movie game for me. I still dig that up every so often because I've got the GameCube version and we've got a Wii in the house, so I can actually get that out quite easily with my GameCube controller and play it. Just briefly on the subject of Suicide Squad, Jason asked if you've seen the Harley cartoon. Have you watched the Harley cartoon yet? It's been on E4 in the UK, hasn't it?
Because why would I watch TV that has adverts in it? Nope.
I've heard very good things from people, and I've seen some clips of it on YouTube, and it looks like something where I think I've said this before, but like the amount of swearing in it makes it look like it's trying to just swear for shock value, and that's not actually that funny. But I've also seen bits that have made me laugh, and I've seen a lot of people talking about really enjoying it. So
when it goes on Netflix or Amazon, I would definitely watch it. But it's only on Channel 4 or All 4, and that's not enough to make me care.
John says that people who save scum their way through XCOM deserve to be stuck in the universe of the Suicide Squad Joker. I will not comment on whether I have ever saved scum on a game of XCOM, except to say that I finally bought XCOM 2 about 2 months ago, and I uninstalled it after less than a week because that was just taking the piss how difficult that was. And I've played through the first one so often, and I've played through it on PC, I played through it on Xbox, and I've played through it on mobile, and I've played Enemy Within 3 or 4 times. I love those games, and XCOM 2 made me want to hurt things, and I actually uninstalled it because it annoyed me that much. So it was just not fair. It just wasn't fair. Okay, but yeah, so Harley Cartoon, I think if one of us gets around to watching it, I might do some coverage at some point because I've heard that it's quite good. Also, Stargirl TV show. We've got Caroline on our next episode, and I'm going to ask Caroline about Stargirl because she's been reviewing it for AV Club. So I'm going to get a roundup from Caroline on that. Going back just to see if we did have a couple of other questions. So let's whiz through a couple of these because they're quite fun ones. Michael asks, is there a comic book movie you'd like to see re-released in cinemas in this gap? Not that you consider going to see it.
I saw that Bloodshot is on a lot of people's, like, we're reopening the cinema, come and see Bloodshot.
Yeah. Which, like, I mean, if I hadn't watched it on demand, like if it had come out and they hadn't got round to the home release yet, and then cinemas were reopening it, it would make sense for it to be a film that they released. But I can't see that that's going to attract people massively because it's been on demand.
No.
Surely anyone who wants to see Bloodshot has seen it.
Yeah. What would I like to see re-released?
What could tempt you to actually go to a cinema at this point where we are both definitely in the camp of, even when they're open, not going yet, want to support the industry, but they need to sort it out a bit better.
I was having a conversation with my friend earlier, and they said something like, you're going to have to choose whether to go and see Black Widow or like risk your life, whether to skip Black Widow or risk your life. And I was like, you know what? I don't care that much about Black Widow. Yeah,
the one that's going to be tricky for me is Bill and Ted. I am going to go and see Bill and Ted. I will be careful. I will hope that it's on at our local cinema.
You wear a full boiler suit.
Our local community cinema, where chances are there'll only be about 5 people in the auditorium anyway, even on a good day. I will be gutted if I can't go and see Bill and Ted 3, taking the necessary precautions. So that'll be the one for me. But Black Widow, I know we've got to cover it for the podcast, but yeah, I'm a bit. Could that not have that? It really would have been helpful to us if that had come out on demand during this time. Should have just put it on Disney, or I would have paid £12 or whatever for it. But.
I'm trying to think which historical comic movie deserves more play. I think. Man, I don't know. I mean, there's no comic movie you could put in a cinema that would make me go to the cinema.
I mean, yeah, I think, well, yeah, and to be fair, Mike's question is like that you'd like to see released in this gap, not that you consider going to see it. So let's assume that there is a gap, a dearth of new releases. Cinemas are fine and safe to go to. What comic book movie would you go and pay to, in normal circumstances, would you pay to go and see at the cinema if it was re-released? I would have to say Superman 78, I think, because I've never seen that on a big screen. I would want to see Christopher Reeve's Superman on a big screen. I'd go for that. And possibly Raimi's Spider-Man, because I first watched that on a... I was at uni when that came out, and I couldn't afford to go to the cinema to see it.
That's insane, Seb.
I had to wait until the holidays, and I got home, and I went to see it with my parents at the local cinema. And it was in a really small screen because it had been out for ages. I had seen it by then. I had watched it on a terrible cam copy that a friend at uni had given me. And I still to this day regret that my first viewing of the Spider-Man movie that I had spent so long building up to, reading and writing about on the internet, I watched pirated because I was that skint at the end of my first year of university that I couldn't go to the cinema to see it. Either that or I just didn't want to wait. I can't remember which.
That was the first film I saw twice at the cinema. I think, yeah. What would I like to see? I would like to see, I think, Spider-Man 2, Raimi's Spider-Man 2 re-released, so that a new generation of people can experience the objectively best live-action Spider-Man movie.
Jelly Scare also says Superman, but also says Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Stephen says Snowpiercer. Yes, if there was a Snowpiercer theatrical release, 100% I would go to that. Yes. I would go to a Parasite re-release, and I've bought Parasite on Blu-ray, and I would still want to see that again on the big screen. Totally Snowpiercer, yes. Yeah, I would possibly go Birds of Prey a second time, actually, because it got so overlooked, and it kind of... I mean, it made it out before the lockdown, but I think it was denied its kind of afterlife, I think. So,
I tell you what, Tank Girl is the one for me. Tank Girl is what would get me back in the cinema, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because that one I didn't see in the cinema, and I would love to. With a sympathetic audience, that would be a great time, I think.
Yeah. I think that kind of a nice cult thing where you know that people are gonna... It's like if we, we said before, if we got to do a movie night, it would be something like... I mean, I think Howard would be pushing it, but I'd love to do a cinematic universe movie night where we showed the Thomas Jane Punisher, because that to me is everything that our podcast is about, and that's still one of the most fun episodes that I think we've ever done. So... we're going to do one more question because I do need to look at wrapping up because it's extremely warm and I want to see what's happening in the football. So Neil asks, do you have any dream casting for the MCU X-Men? Because I do have one answer to this, and I'm sure it's one that I've banged on about before, but do you have any others? It's I've forgotten his name. Why have I forgotten his name? Taron Egerton as Wolverine.
I was about to say, do you mean Taron Egerton as Wolverine? Because that's the only one anyone ever mentions.
I know it's the only one anyone ever mentions because it's really, really obvious and it makes all kinds of sense, and I would be happy to see it. So,
yeah.
Any others?
Arnold Schwarzenegger as Cable. Because he's old enough now. He's the right age to be Cable.
He's the right age to be.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That's nuts. That surely it should be Josh Brolin though, still. But that's
Yeah. Maybe Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I'm really bad with fan casting.
You don't like fan casting, do you? Because you don't think about actors. If we'd got this question beforehand, we could have asked other people and got some responses to this.
Yeah, I'm really bad.
Cyclops. I mean, to be honest, having just rewatched the Sonic movie, let's get James Marsden back as Cyclops. I've got no ill will towards James Marsden after rewatching that Sonic movie, which holds up really well. It was really fun on a second viewing, and my wife enjoyed it, and my daughter got bored and kept asking when Tails was going to turn up. But then for about the last 20 minutes, she really got into it as well. So, and she liked it when Sonic called Dr. Robotnik Eggman. So. It's good. It's a good film. I like it. I'm looking forward to the sequel. That's all I can say.
The squeakquel.
This will only make sense if you follow the artist Rachel Stott on Twitter or Twitch. But Rowan Atkinson, let's Emma Frost. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like am I just kind of killing time waiting to see if any other responses come through to that question, because I think it's a good question that I don't have an immediate answer.
It is a very good question, but I am not.
James, name some X-Men. Name some X-Men.
Name some X-Men. Rogue.
Rogue. Who could be Rogue?
Yeah.
Florence Pugh.
Yeah, I can see that.
That one's for Joe, but she's already in the MCU, so that's no good.
This
is the thing. I'm only going to think of people who've been in MCU films. They're the only actors I know.
Who could play Emma Frost? That's a good question.
Who could play Emma Frost? Not January Jones.
No.
I don't know. I'm not going to sit here blankly and try and figure it out and just have really bad responses.
The thing for me is I think cast unknowns, not unknowns, but don't cast anyone we would think of.
I mean, actually, yeah. I mean,
if Hugh Jackman proves anything, it's find the right person first.
Yeah. Also, do you not think, and I think this probably is quite a crucial point, because we haven't had it before. I mean, we've had it with some of the characters, but not all of them. Let's have the MCU X-Men be teenagers. Let's have them as a group of young characters discovering their powers as a team, because also that's something the MCU hasn't done. So the MCU has done young characters, but not as a team. So let's have
the X-Men,
if not the original 5, because they're very, very white, but let's have an original 5 that are literally Professor Xavier's well, it's first class, isn't it? But let's have that basically.
I would say so. Okay, so that's a good question.
Okay, so who are your X-Men to come into the MCU
team?
first? You're on safer ground there.
I would say a good way to start would be to do the original 5 plus Storm and maybe Wolverine in there somehow. Maybe as a villain. But I think it would be.
So you're talking about Ultimate X-Men, basically. That's pretty much exactly what you've just pitched. Is Mark Miller's first arc of Ultimate X-Men.
Mark Miller has lots of good ideas, like stashed in a drawer that he has taken from other people. He has them in a big folder marked G. Morrison.
I was going to know, literally, there was something, I can't even remember what it was, the other day. I was reading through something, and something struck me as, I know what it was. It was The Invisibles. I was reading the first issue of The Invisibles, and I was like, if you take out the Grant Morrison-ness of this, and like the John Lennon stuff and all the weird trippy stuff, it's Kingsman. It's literally Kingsman. Kingsman, or the Secret Service, as it was in the comic, it's just stolen from The Invisibles.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it now you said that.
Yeah, the delinquent who then he gets arrested and then he gets spirited away to this secret organization who are training him to. It's like it's the same. Anyway, yeah, Mark Miller there. We love Mark Miller. Anyway, yeah. So you're X-Men. So you've got original 5 plus Storm and Wolverine.
Yeah, and I would do them as teenagers because, like you say, the sort of central metaphor of the X-Men, or at least when it came out, was like, hey, your body goes weird when you're a teenager, and isn't it freaky? And they've never really expanded that.
I don't agree with that because I think they didn't do that in the 60s. They didn't give you the origins for all the characters. They were all there. They gave you Jean's origin. And actually, I tell you, a fantastic comic and a really underrated one. The X-Men season 1, when Marvel did those season 1 original graphic novels they were like a new version of Ultimate in that they were these kind of continuity free. Some of them do read a bit like movie pitches, but they were sort of fresh introductions and modernizings of the concept. And X-Men season 1 was basically like Jean Grey's first year after joining the X-Men. It's written by Dennis Hopeless, drawn by Jamie McKelvey. It's really great. It's really, really good. And that as a template is, have one character join. I mean, again, it's kind of similar to what the first movie did, but have the rest of them, they've been there for a little while and it's somebody's first term at the school.
That's the thing, right? It's not, the X-Men as a team don't really have an origin. What they have is their powers manifest and Professor X collects them and then they fight Magneto after being trained. Like, it's not a hard origin story because you can do that in lots of different ways. Like, you can focus on different characters, you can focus on different aspects of their powers awakening and their training, or the school. It's not like Spider-Man where you get a very rigid template about, hey, this is a story about responsibility and here's your guy and this is what happens to him.
Who's your MCU Magneto?
Who's my MCU Magneto? Good question.
Because one just popped into my head. I'll tell you who my MCU Magneto is. Michael Shannon.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I was literally about to say, if I was doing an MCU Magneto, I would make him a bit younger and a bit more buff than the Ian McKellen version.
Well, your man, Fassbender. I'm forgetting names tonight.
Yeah, but like I would make him a bit more formidable in that sense.
Yeah, someone they can actually fight rather than someone who's got to hide behind. So,
minions.
Yeah, minions. Yeah.
Can we keep talking about X-Men? I do like talking about X-Men.
You do like talking about X-Men. Have you got some more X-Men Patreon pods coming up?
I have. My contract at the museum finishes tomorrow, so I will be back on it. There you
go. And yeah, Nick says, back to the early question about cinema re-releases. Scott Pilgrim was supposed to get 10th anniversary screenings, but did not. I tell you what, I haven't read all of it yet, but that oral history article that just went up for the 10th anniversary, and the thing that got picked out that Edgar Wright tweeted about was that Chris Evans taught everybody on set how to high five, which is that if you look at the person's elbow instead of their hand, you will always make contact. And me and Joe tried it. I told Joe this evening, and we immediately tried it and had the most satisfying high fives I've ever done in my life. So next time that you're actually, obviously someone who you can actually make contact with, socially distanced and all of that, but next time you're in a position to give someone a high five, look at their elbow, and by gum, it works. So thank you, Captain America, for teaching the world how to high five.
Amazing.
Well, we're heading towards an hour. It'll be slightly shorter than an hour on the podcast version because if this audio is usable, I will be chopping off the beginning. But also, this microphone might not provide podcastable audio. Thank you to everyone who watched and stuck with us for the duration of this. I hope you keep enjoying these live chats. We seem to have a quite nice little loyal cluster of regular people who it's always really nice
Bring your friend
to have a chat with. I should see if there's a way to let James actually see the comments before I put them up on screen, because I get to see this whole stream, but then James can only see whatever I actually put on screen. Oh yeah, because you could go on YouTube, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so you do. Oh no, do you get the comments on your dashboard on streaming?
I can see the chat, and I can select live comments, and I can see everything.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So James can see them. He just chooses.
Timothy Chalamet is Nightcrawler.
Yeah. There you go. See, so sometimes I press a button to make these come up on screen thinking, this will be the first time James has seen this. And it turns out that you'll have seen it for ages.
Well, I don't look at the chat.
You're getting a lot of peeks behind the
discussion afterwards. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you, Terence, for your comment saying he loves these and keep up the good work. We'll probably do another one quite soon, probably hopefully in less hot weather. And I'm going to go and find out if it's still Chelsea 1, Man City 0, and if Liverpool are about to become Premier League champions for the first time in 30 years. So that'll be fun. And we'll see you all soon. So yeah, we'll do our next episode, and I can reveal our next episode that we are doing with Joe and Caroline is going to be Josie and the Pussycats. So I need to watch that over the weekend, and we're going to record it early next week, and as I say, hopefully get it out in about a week and a half to 2 weeks time. So thanks as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye. Awkward bit where I'm looking at the bit to say end broadcast, but we haven't ended broadcast yet.